Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the anomalous readings flooding her holographic display, her coffee growing cold beside her keyboard. The energy signature at the edge of the solar system had appeared 3 days ago, and it defied every known law of physics. She brushed a strand of graying hair from her face, squinting at the data streams flowing through the Deep Space Observatory's quantum computers. "You're still here." Marcus Rodriguez's voice carried across the empty control room. The young astrophysicist dropped into the chair beside her, sliding a fresh cup of coffee her way. "It's past midnight, Sarah. Look at these patterns," she said, gesturing at the swirling data streams. "They're not random. There's a structure here that suggests intelligence." Marcus leaned forward, his dark eyes scanning the readings. "You think it's artificial? A ship. Not just one ship." Sarah manipulated the holographic display, expanding the energy signature's scope. "Based on the scale, we're looking at an entire fleet. And they're slowing down." The implications hung heavy in the air between them. Humanity had searched for extraterrestrial intelligence for centuries, but not like this. Not as an armada appearing on their doorstep without warning. Sarah's quantum pad chimed, displaying an incoming message from the Director of Planetary Defense. Her heart skipped a beat as she read it. "They're broadcasting." The message had arrived simultaneously at every major communications facility on Earth. It was a simple text transmission, encoded in basic binary. "We are the Nexus. We have watched. We have waited. We require your world. Surrender, and your species will be preserved." Within hours, the observatory's control room filled with military personnel and government officials. General Catherine Hayes, a stern woman with steel-gray hair and piercing eyes, took command of the situation. "Dr. Chen, what can you tell us about their capabilities?" Sarah projected her analysis onto the main screen. "Their energy output suggests technology far beyond our current understanding. The fleet's size is substantial. Conservative estimates put it at over 300 capital ships, and non-conservative estimates." The general's voice was tight. "Over 1,000. Sarah watched the color drain from several faces in the room. "But there's something else. The energy signatures contain unusual biological markers. Whatever these beings are, their technology seems to be partially organic." The next 48 hours became a blur of emergency meetings, global broadcasts, and mounting panic. The Nexus fleet maintained its position at the solar system's edge, waiting. Their second message arrived as world leaders debated response options. "Your biological diversity is unique, essential. We require it to save our species. Resistance will only increase the harvest's cost." Sarah worked without rest, analyzing every scrap of data they could gather about the alien fleet. Marcus brought her food she barely touched, his usual jovial demeanor replaced by grim determination. Together, they discovered something extraordinary in the Nexus's transmissions. Their communications contained trace elements of psychic energy, Sarah explained to the hastily assembled United Earth Defense Council. "It suggests they're partially telepathic beings. They're not just sending messages, they're trying to reach into our minds." "But they haven't succeeded," Marcus added, pulling up his findings. "Something in human neurophysiology seems to naturally resist their influence. We've detected attempts at planetary-scale telepathic contact, but they're not getting through." General Hayes leaned forward. "Could this be a weakness we can exploit?" Before Sarah could respond, the observatory's alarms screamed to life. The Nexus fleet had begun to move, accelerating toward the inner solar system. Their final message was brief. "Time has expired. The harvest begins." Sarah watched the massive ships approach on the holographic display, her mind racing. Humanity's resistance to Nexus telepathy wasn't just a defense, it was a discovery that could change everything. But first, they had to survive. "General," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "I need a team. The best geneticists and neurologists we have. There's something in our DNA, something that makes us unique. If we can understand it before they reach Earth." Hayes nodded sharply. You'll have whatever you need. But make it quick, Doctor. We've got less than 72 hours before they enter weapons range. As the control room erupted into action around her, Sarah stared at the approaching fleet. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew the answer, but it came with a price. The real question was, could they afford not to pay it? Marcus squeezed her shoulder. Ready to save the world. Sarah managed a grim smile, more like ready to understand why they wanted so badly. She pulled up the genetic analysis software, fingers flying across the holographic keyboard. The Nexus needs something from us, something in our biology. If we can figure out what it is, we might find a way to survive. Marcus finished. The first Nexus scout ships would reach Mars within hours. As Sarah dove into her research, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's greatest challenge would require more than just survival. It would demand something far more difficult. Understanding an alien enemy before they could destroy each other. Above them, the stars seemed to dim as the massive Nexus fleet approached, their organic ships casting shadows across the solar system. The price of first contact would be high. The only question was whether humanity could afford to pay it, or afford not to. The genetic research lab beneath Denver's Rocky Mountain complex hummed with activity as Dr. Sarah Chen examined the latest test results. 48 hours had passed since the Nexus fleet crossed Mars' orbit, and they had already begun establishing bases on Earth's moon. Look at this. She gestured to Marcus, who was analyzing neural scan data across the room. The holographic display showed a complex molecular structure rotating slowly in the air. There's a previously undocumented protein in our synaptic junctions. It seems to create a kind of natural dampening field against external psychic interference. Marcus wheeled his chair over, dark circles under his eyes betraying his exhaustion. That explains why their telepathic attempts keep failing. But why didn't we notice this before? Because we weren't looking for it. Sarah manipulated the display, highlighting specific protein chains. It's so fundamentally integrated into our neural architecture that we always assumed it was just background noise. But it's not. It's a shield that evolved over millions of years. The lab's emergency speakers crackled to life with General Hayes's voice. Dr. Chen, we need you in command. The Nexus just launched their first ground invasion. In the military command center, massive screens showed live footage from around the globe. Organic-looking pods were descending through the atmosphere, each carrying hundreds of Nexus soldiers. The aliens moved with unsettling grace, their iridescent exoskeletons reflecting sunlight as they established beachheads on 6 continents. They're avoiding population centers, Hayes noted, studying the tactical display. Instead, they're targeting biological preserves, rainforests, and marine sanctuaries. They're after genetic samples. Sarah watched as Nexus collectors moved through the Amazon rainforest, gathering specimens with extraordinary precision. They're not just taking random samples. They know exactly what they're looking for. A commotion near the communication station drew their attention. A young lieutenant looked up from his console, face pale. We're receiving a transmission from one of the Nexus ground forces. They want to speak with Dr. Chen. The alien that appeared on the main screen was both beautiful and terrifying. Its crystalline carapace shifted colors like oil on water, and multiple eyes arranged in a circular pattern studied them with unnerving intelligence. When it spoke, its words were transmitted directly into their minds, though the natural resistance made them feel distant, like echoes. Dr. Sarah Chen, the alien's thoughts whispered, I am Executor Ven. Your species intrigues us. You resist the unity, yet your genetic structure holds the key to our salvation. Explain. Sarah stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. What is the unity? It is what we are, what all advanced species become, a perfect telepathic union of minds and purpose. Ven's colors shifted to deeper hues. Yet you remain fragmented, individual. And in that imperfection lies a strength we desperately need. Because your unity is failing, Marcus interjected, earning a sharp look from General Hayes. Yes, Ven's admission carried undertones of ancient grief. The unity grows weaker with each generation. Our collective consciousness frays. Without new genetic material to revitalize our species, we face extinction. Sarah's mind raced, connecting pieces of the puzzle. The protein we discovered, it doesn't just resist telepathy. It stabilizes neural pathways during complex mental interactions. That's what you need, isn't it? Your ancestors evolved alongside powerful psychic predators, Ven explained. They developed natural defenses we never needed until the unity began to destroy us. Now we require that strength, or billions will die as our collective consciousness collapses. So you decided to just take it. General Hayes stepped forward, her voice hard. Invade our world and harvest what you need. We have watched your species for centuries. Ven's colors darkened further. You war among yourselves. Destroy your own world. The unity decided your potential was outweighed by your violence. The harvest was deemed the most efficient solution. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the complex. On the tactical displays, new signals appeared. Massive Nexus ships descending through the atmosphere. The harvest ships, Ven announced. They come to collect. Sarah stared at the protein model still floating on her tablet. An idea forming. What if there was another way? The protein can be synthesized. If we worked together, the unity has decided. Ven's presence began to fade from their minds. Your resistance is impressive, but futile. We will take what we need. As the transmission ended, Marcus grabbed Sarah's arm. The protein synthesis. Could it really work? Maybe. She turned to General Hayes. But I need more time, and samples of their neural tissue to understand how the protein would interact with their biology. Hayes studied the tactical displays, watching as human military forces engaged the first wave of Nexus harvesters. How do you propose we get those samples? The resistance to their telepathy works both ways, Sarah explained. They can't read our minds, but they also can't sense us coming. If we could get a team aboard one of their ships, a suicide mission, Hayes muttered, but her eyes showed interest, against an enemy that literally shares one mind. Not quite one mind, Marcus corrected, pulling up his latest analysis. Their unity is fragmenting, remember. There might be gaps we can exploit, especially if we can amplify our natural resistance. Sarah nodded. Give me 12 hours to modify the protein structure. We might be able to create a temporary complete immunity to their telepathy, long enough for a team to get in and out. Hayes considered for a long moment as explosions bloomed on the tactical displays. Finally, she reached for her comm unit. Commander Walsh, get your infiltration team ready. Looks like you're going alien hunting. Outside, harvest ships cast massive shadows over cities and wilderness alike. But for the first time since the Nexus arrived, humanity had more than just defensive options. They had a plan. Sarah returned to her lab, Marcus close behind. As they worked to weaponize humanity's hidden advantage, neither spoke the obvious truth. They were in a race against time. Every hour brought more harvest ships, more collected specimens, more steps toward humanity's possible extinction. Yet in that desperate work, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. The Nexus needed them, whether they admitted it or not. And sometimes, need was the first step toward understanding. Commander Diana Walsh checked her tactical display one final time as her stealth shuttle approached the massive Nexus harvester ship. The vessel's organic hull pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, its surface riddled with what looked like veins carrying glowing fluid. Approaching insertion point, her pilot whispered. The entire 6-person team wore neural dampeners of Dr. Chen's design, experimental devices that amplified their natural resistance to Nexus telepathy. No sign they've detected us. Diana nodded, checking her modified combat suit. The mission was simple on paper. Infiltrate the harvester, collect neural tissue samples, and plant Dr. Chen's biological weapon. a tailored virus designed to temporarily disrupt the Unity's telepathic network. Getting out alive was considered optional. Remember, Dr. Chen's voice crackled through their comms from the ground station. The samples need to be from their primary neural clusters. Look for areas with high energy signatures and concentrated bioluminescence. The shuttle matched speed with the harvester, using its massive bulk for radar coverage. Diana's team prepared for vacuum insertion as their pilot lined up with what appeared to be a maintenance access port. 3 minutes to contact, the pilot announced. Still no signs off. The ship lurched violently. Warning lights flashed as something grabbed their shuttle, crushing it like a tin can. Diana had a split-second glimpse of crystalline tentacles before hitting the emergency evacuation switch. Breach and scatter. She shouted as her team blew explosive bolts, detaching sections of the shuttle's hull. They pushed off in different directions, using their suits' thrusters to aim for various points on the harvester's surface. Diana slammed into the organic hull, magnetic grapples engaging. Around her, emergency beacons showed her scattered team. All 6 had made it. She switched to encrypted short-range comms. "Form up on my position. We're going in hot." They cut through the living hull with molecular torches, the alien tissue attempting to heal itself even as they burned through. Inside, the corridors were a nightmare of organic technology, walls pulsing with neural energy and floor plates that seemed to breathe. Life support nominal, Diana's sensor officer reported. Atmospheres compatible. But these energy readings, the whole ship is alive. They moved deeper, following their sensors toward the highest concentrations of neural activity. Twice they had to hide from Nexus drones, crystalline entities that floated through the corridors like lethal jewels. The neural dampeners worked. The drones passed without detecting them. "Central chamber ahead," Diana whispered. "Energy readings are off the scale." They emerged onto a catwalk overlooking a vast spherical space. In the center, suspended in a web of glowing filaments, hung what could only be described as a brain. Massive, crystalline, and pulsing with psychic energy that their dampeners barely held at bay. "My God," Sarah's voice breathed through their comms. "It's a node of their collective consciousness. The ship itself is an extension of their shared mind." As if in response to her words, the chamber's atmosphere changed. The neural filaments began to glow brighter, and a presence pressed against their mental shields. "You should not be here." The thought wasn't speech, but it echoed in their minds. From recessed alcoves around the chamber, Nexus warriors emerged, their crystalline forms more elaborate and deadly than the drones. Diana's team formed a defensive circle, weapons ready. But the warriors didn't attack. Instead, they parted to allow a new figure to emerge, a Nexus entity unlike any they'd seen. Its crystalline body was shot through with strands of darkness, its colors muted and fragmented. "I am Unity Node Architect 7, it communicated. "You have breached containment to reach this place. Yet you resist Unity's touch. Fascinating." "We're here to understand," Diana replied, keeping her weapon ready but lowered. "Your harvest is killing our world. There has to be another way." The harvest. The node architect's colors shifted chaotically. "Yes, the harvest proceeds, but you do not understand its purpose. Come closer, humans. See the truth." Against every tactical instinct, Diana stepped forward. The node architect extended a crystalline limb, touching her neural dampener. Images flooded her mind, not forced, but offered. She saw the Nexus civilization in its glory days, a species that had transcended individual consciousness to become something greater. Their unity brought peace, progress, and understanding beyond anything individual minds could achieve. But then came the fragments. The unity is not just failing, the node architect shared. It is shattering. Each generation, more of us are born broken, unable to join the collective consciousness. They suffer in isolation, driven mad by their separation. Diana watched in horror as the images continued. Vast chambers filled with crystalline forms writhing in mental agony, their colors corrupted by darkness like the node architect's own form. The harvest wasn't just about collecting genetic material. It was a desperate race to prevent a catastrophic collapse of their entire civilization. The protein. Sarah's voice cut through Diana's vision. You don't just need it to strengthen the unity. You need it to help those who can't connect. Yes, the node architect's confirmation carried infinite sadness. But the unity cannot admit this truth, cannot acknowledge that our perfect collective might be flawed. And so they ordered the harvest, claiming it was merely to strengthen our species. The truth would shatter us completely. Diana looked at her team, then back at the node architect. Help us understand. Work with us. There might be a way to save both our species. Before the entity could respond, alarms blared throughout the chamber. On Diana's tactical display, massive energy signatures appeared around Earth. More harvest ships. The node architect communicated urgently. The unity grows desperate. They will strip your world bare rather than face the truth of our decline. Diana reached for the biological weapon in her pack. Then help us stop them. This virus, it's designed to temporarily disrupt the unity's network. Give us time to find a real solution. The node architect studied her for a long moment, its colors swirling with internal conflict. Finally, it reached out, taking the weapon. The unity will try to stop me. But perhaps it is time for truth. As Diana and her team watched, the node architect approached the central neural mass. Behind them, Nexus warriors stood motionless, caught between conflicting loyalties. Go, the node architect commanded. Return to your leaders. Tell them what you have learned. The next few hours will determine both our species' fate. Diana's team retreated the way they came, unopposed by the Nexus forces. As they reached their emergency extraction point, the first waves of Dr. Chen's virus began to spread through the Unity network. The real battle, not for survival, but for understanding, was about to begin. Dr. Sarah Chen's hands trembled as she studied the incoming data strings. The virus had worked better than anyone anticipated, perhaps too well. Across Earth's skies, Nexus ships hum motionless, their organic systems caught in a cascade of telepathic disruption. Their neural networks are fragmenting, Marcus reported, monitoring the quantum feeds. But something else is happening. The protein isn't just blocking their telepathy anymore. It's adapting. Sarah watched as new patterns emerged in the data. The virus had merged with the protein's structure, creating something entirely new. It's building bridges, she whispered. Neural pathways between our species. The first reports came from military units near Nexus landing zones. Soldiers described sudden flashes of alien memories, overwhelming emotions that weren't their own. In return, the Nexus experienced something they'd never known. True individuality, separated from their collective consciousness. General Hayes burst into the lab, her usual composure shaken. We're getting reports of mass panic. Civilians near Nexus ships are experiencing psychic feedback. We need to shut this down. We can't. Sarah pulled up the virus's genetic structure. It's not just a temporary disruption anymore. It's evolving, creating a new kind of neural network. One that connects both species. In orbit, Commander Walsh's rescue shuttle approached Earth, carrying samples from the harvester ship. Her team's neural dampeners had begun to fail, leaving them exposed to the changing psychic landscape. I can feel them. Diana reported, her voice tight with strain. Their fear, their desperation. It's like drowning in an ocean of alien thoughts. Through this new connection, humanity began to truly understand the Nexus crisis. They weren't just facing the collapse of their unity. They were experiencing the mental deterioration of an entire civilization. Generations of perfect telepathic harmony had left them unable to function as individuals. Those born disconnected from the unity weren't just isolated. They were effectively crippled, lacking the basic psychological structures needed for independent existence. In the Rocky Mountain complex, Sarah worked frantically to understand the evolving situation. The virus had become a bridge, but that bridge was threatening to collapse both species' mental architecture. Their unity is trying to reassert control, Marcus observed, watching the neural patterns shift. But it's pulling in human consciousness now. We're becoming part of their network. Sarah felt it herself, alien thoughts brushing against her mind, carrying centuries of collective memory and knowledge. The experience was both terrifying and oddly beautiful. This is what they are, she realized. Not just a collective, but a living library of shared experience. The Nexus were experiencing their own crisis. Unity Node Architect 7, now in constant contact with Sarah's team, shared their perspective. The Unity fragments, it communicated. But in fragmenting, we learn. Your minds show us something we had forgotten. The strength of individual thought combined with collective understanding. But not everyone could handle the merger. Reports flooded in of people overwhelmed by alien memories, of Nexus drones going berserk as human emotions invaded their structured minds. The breaking point was approaching fast. High above Earth, the massive Nexus harvester ships began to move again. But instead of resuming their collection of Earth's biosphere, they turned their sensors inward. The Unity, fragmented but not destroyed, had made a discovery. The virus, Node Architect 7 explained to Sarah through their strengthening mental link. It shows a path we never considered. Your protein does not just resist telepathy, it regulates it, creates boundaries between minds while allowing controlled connection. Sarah understood. A balance between unity and individuality. Yes, but achieving this balance requires something we lost long ago. Choice. Each mind must choose connection, must learn to be both separate and unified. The implications stunned her. You want to use the virus to rebuild your entire civilization. The risk is necessary. The Node Architect's thoughts carried absolute conviction. We face extinction otherwise. Not just physical death, but the death of all we are, all we have learned and built. In the command center, General Hayes watched as more Nexus ships arrived. Not harvest vessels, but massive archive ships carrying the accumulated knowledge of their civilization. They're evacuating their data cores to our system, Marcus reported. All of their history, their science, their collective memory. They're trusting us to preserve it while they attempt this transformation. Sarah felt the weight of that trust through the strengthening psychic link. The Nexus were placing their entire civilization in humanity's hands, betting everything on this desperate gamble for survival. But time was running out. The virus's effects were becoming more pronounced, threatening to overwhelm both species' neural architecture. They needed to find a way to stabilize the connection, to build something new that could preserve both human individuality and Nexus unity. The protein, Sarah said suddenly, her mind racing. We need to modify it again, not to block the connection, but to regulate it. Create a biological switch that lets minds choose when and how to connect. Through their mental link, she felt Node Architect 7's approval, and its fear. The unity was splintering further, some factions refusing to accept change, others embracing the possibility of a new way of existence. Earth's governments were similarly divided. Some demanded they sever the connection immediately, regardless of the cost to the Nexus. Others saw an opportunity for humanity to evolve, to gain access to centuries of advanced knowledge and experience. In her lab, Sarah worked against time, trying to modify the protein structure while managing the growing pressure of alien thoughts in her mind. The future of both species hung in the balance, and the breaking point was approaching fast. Through it all, one truth became increasingly clear. There would be no going back. Whatever emerged from this crisis would be something entirely new. Either a bridge between species that preserved the best of both, or a catastrophic collapse that could destroy them all. Marcus touched her shoulder, his own mind now carrying echoes of Nexus knowledge. Ready to make history. Sarah managed a tired smile. Ready to save it first. She turned back to her work, feeling the weight of two civilizations' hopes pressing against her consciousness. The breaking point wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about transformation. The sky above Denver shimmered with unprecedented activity. Nexus archive ships hung in complex formations, their crystalline hulls refracting sunlight into prismatic displays. Below, in the reinforced laboratories of the Rocky Mountain Complex, Dr. Sarah Chen prepared for humanity's most ambitious experiment. Neural integration at 60% and rising, Marcus reported, his voice strained by the effort of maintaining his own mental barriers. The modified protein synthesis was ready, but they needed a way to distribute it simultaneously to both species. The Unity fragments are becoming unstable. Through their strengthening mental link, Sarah felt the Nexus civilization's growing panic. Their collective consciousness was dissolving, ancient bonds of thought and memory unraveling. But in that dissolution, something new was emerging. Individual voices, distinct personalities rising from the fragments of Unity. Ready for Phase 1, Sarah announced, checking the delivery systems. They had converted the complex's atmospheric processors into distribution centers for the modified protein. Similar systems were being prepared worldwide. Commander Walsh, status of the orbital platforms. Diana's voice crackled through both radio and mental channels. Orbital dispersal units in position. The Nexus ships are. They're helping us modify their own environmental systems. They'll spread the protein through their entire fleet simultaneously. The plan was unprecedented. A coordinated biological and psychological restructuring of two species at once. The modified protein would create a new kind of neural architecture, allowing minds to connect and separate at will while maintaining their essential nature. The Unity fears this change. Node Architect 7 communicated, its crystalline form now stationed permanently in the complex. Yet we fear extinction more. We must evolve or die. Sarah felt a sudden surge of alien emotion, not just from 7, but from countless Nexus minds touching hers. Their civilization's memories cascaded through her consciousness. The glory of their first Unity, the peace it brought, the gradual realization of its cost, and now the desperate hope for transformation. General Hayes, Sarah called through the comm. We're ready to begin. Worldwide authorization confirmed, Hayes responded. God help us all. Execute. Sarah initiated the sequence. Around the world, distribution centers hummed to life. In orbit, Nexus ships began cycling their environmental systems. The modified protein spread through Earth's atmosphere in a fine mist, while similar particles filtered through alien vessels. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Sarah gasped as her mental barriers shifted, transformed by the new protein structure. The chaotic flood of alien thoughts clarified, becoming a controlled stream she could access or block at will. Through their link, she felt the Nexus experiencing something equally profound. The ability to exist as individuals while maintaining connections of their choosing. Their minds, evolved for constant unity, learned to create boundaries without losing touch entirely. It's working, Marcus breathed, wonderment in his voice. The protein is stabilizing both species' neural patterns. We're achieving balance. But not everyone could handle the change. Some humans, overwhelmed by the possibility of mental connection, retreated into complete isolation. Some Nexus, unable to adapt to partial separation, fell into catatonic states. There will be costs, Node Architect 7 acknowledged. Change demands sacrifice. But look at what we become. Through their new connection, Sarah saw it. Humans and Nexus learning to share knowledge while maintaining their unique perspectives. The best of both worlds. Unity without uniformity, connection without loss of self. In orbit, the massive arc of ships began their true work, not just preserving Nexus knowledge, but creating something unprecedented. A shared repository of both species' experiences and understanding, accessible to all who chose to connect. The harvest chips, Diana reported from her orbital station. They're transforming. Their collection systems are being repurposed for environmental restoration. It made sense. The Nexus no longer needed to strip Earth's biosphere. Instead, they could help repair the damage done by both the invasion and humanity's own activities. Their advanced biotechnology, combined with human innovation, offered solutions to problems both species faced. The next few days brought rapid changes. Earth's governments established new protocols for human-Nexus interaction. The alien ships began landing properly, establishing permanent bases for cultural and scientific exchange. Both species had to adapt to a new way of existence, one that offered both connection and choice. In her lab, Sarah worked to refine the protein formula, making it more stable and easier to control. Through her mental link, she collaborated with Nexus scientists, their combined knowledge accelerating progress beyond what either species could have achieved alone. "We did it," Marcus said one evening, watching through the lab's windows as a Nexus construction ship used crystalline technology to purify Denver's air. "We actually found a way forward." Sarah nodded, feeling the gentle hum of connected minds at the edge of her consciousness, a reminder of what they'd gained and what they'd chosen to preserve. "We found more than that. We found a balance." The price of unity had been high: fear, conflict, and the risk of mutual destruction. But the reward was beyond anything either species had imagined. A future where diversity and unity could coexist, where individual strength and collective wisdom could work in harmony. Node Architect 7, its crystalline form now showing healthy colors, shared a final thought. "This is not an ending, but a beginning. Together, we will explore what it truly means to be unified yet free, connected yet unique. The dawn of true unity arrives not through force, but through choice." Around the world, and throughout the solar system, humans and Nexus looked toward that dawn together. They had faced extinction and found transformation instead. The challenge now was not survival, but growth, learning to use their new connection to build something greater than either species could have imagined alone. Sarah touched her temple, feeling the steady pulse of the network she could now access or leave at will. The future would bring new challenges, but they would face them with the combined strength of two civilizations that had learned the most valuable lesson of all. True unity comes not from erasing differences, but from choosing to bridge them.